I now call this meeting in Davenport Community School District Board of Directors to order. First thing, I would like to observe a moment of silence as today is the anniversary of 9/11. So if everyone please take a moment of silence. Thank you. Now if everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Director Barnes, would you please read the mission and vision statements?
The Davenport Community School District is dedicated to growing excellence in academics, the arts, and athletics for every child by ensuring the highest quality education in an environment shaped by our diverse community, preparing our students to be lifelong learners and productive citizens. The vision statement: education that challenges conventional thinking, prepares all students to compete in a global society, and inspires our students, parents, staff, and community to answer the question, what if?
Thank you, Director Barnes. Director Poston, would you please read the guiding principles?
Guiding principles: opportunity. We provide abundant opportunities to empower students to reach their full potential academically, creatively, and socially. Collaboration. We foster an environment that allows students, families, and community stakeholders to come together for the betterment of our students' education and future. Transparency. We share relevant and important information with our students, families, and the community to maintain open and productive communication.
Thank you, Director Poston. Superintendent Schneckloff, would you please read the goals?
Goal 2 and Goal 4, increase access and success for all students. And Goal 4, foster the innovative use of finances, facility, and staff.
Thank you. I see we don't have any recognitions tonight or presentations, so we'll move on to board reports. Are there any board reports? Director Klein-Jerome.
We would just like to offer condolences to Director Barnes, whose mother passed away this last week.
Thank you.
Are there any other board reports? I have a couple. Myself and the superintendent we did our bi-monthly meeting with the mayor and city administrator of Davenport. And then the following night we had met with the mayor of Buffalo as well to do our bi-monthly meetings with them. And then Friday, myself, Superintendent Schneckloff, and Vice President Klein-Jerome had our monthly meeting with LULAC. Very productive meeting. We were able to do some things with them. With that, does anyone have any other board reports? Brenda, you're up.
Just a reminder that school board elections will be held in conjunction with the city elections on Tuesday, November 7th. The terms of 5 of our school board members expire in November. Gosa, Klein-Jerome, Hayes, Poston, and Barnes are the members whose terms are up. 4 openings are for traditional 4-year terms. 1 opening is for a 2-year term. The 2-year term is the term that Director Barnes is completing right now. Candidates will indicate on their affidavit of candidacy if they're running to fill a 2-year or a 4-year vacancy. If you're interested, anybody listening or here in the room, in running for the school board, you're welcome to pick up a packet from me. Items are also available on the Secretary of State and Iowa Association of School Boards websites. They also have additional excellent information, webinars, and that kind of thing if you're running. Nomination papers must be filed between now and September 21st with me. Thanks.
Thank you, Brenda. Any other board reports? Seeing none, I will move on to open forum. Open forum is a time for members of the community to give input at a board meeting regarding school district issues or concerns. Individuals who want to speak, please file an open forum request and give it to the board secretary prior to open forum. The form is available in hard copy for in-person attendees or on the school board page of the district's website for those who want to participate virtually. Virtual participants must email their request to Brenda T. at tbren@davenportschools.org by 3 p.m. on the day of the board meeting. The board will not act on any issue presented during open forum if it was not published as an agenda item. Iowa Open Meetings Law prohibits action on any issue that is not on the agenda. The president may set the amount of time allowed for individuals to speak. The board asks that no charges or complaints be made against individual employees of the district or community. Remarks that reflect negatively on the character or motives of any person will be called out of order. You will be asked to state your name and home address prior to making remarks. We have one open forum request, and Brenda said there were no virtual requests. So up first, or up only, we have Craig Leonard. Three minutes.
3 minutes, wow. I like 5 minutes. Anyway, Craig Leonard, 107 North Thornwood. I'm just coming in for the first time, decided to talk to y'all. Most of y'all know me in this room, most of you. 21 years of service, happy to be there. 10 years of, over a decade of coaching. So I want to talk about the scoreboards. We are going into the next phase of planning the 2 junior highs on making fields, and I believe that's going into probably junior highs will play each other at each other's field. I'm just guesstimating. I don't know anybody's idea on that. But I just want to do a highly suggestion is to start bringing scoreboards to the junior high level, and that's what I'm suggesting, portable scoreboard or build-ins, whichever way you want to go with that, because it will help out engage the parents to know what to score, how much time is left in the game, everything like that. And it also will help coaching such as me run the scoreboard and actually know how much more time I have in each quarter. So that's all I got. Efficient. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. The board always loves to have the input of the community and staff members as well, so thank you very much. We will move on to the consent agenda. May I have a motion on the consent agenda?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move the board accept the consent agenda as written.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
The motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. Superintendent report.
I have 2 items. The first one, last Friday, the American Legion Post 26 donated a prisoner of war flag to us, and we were able to raise that at the national anthem. Incredibly proud thing to be presented with that. They did an excellent job, and we just want to extend our thank you to them. The second piece is we have, I'm very excited to introduce for the second time, Tim Bellman's with us tonight. Tim, raise your hand, please. Tim is our new Director of Technology. Tim is joining the Davenport Community School District with over 20 years of progressive information technology experience. Tim most recently served as the Senior IT Infrastructure Manager at Arconic Corporation. Prior to Arconic, Tim serves as the Director of Information Technology at Eaton Corporation, previously Cobham. Tim obtained his bachelor's degree in computer science systems with a minor in management from St. Ambrose University. At Arconic, Tim managed the IT infrastructure globally, where he drove consistency, maintained system uptime, and developed tools and practices to improve operations of systems and facilities. All of this work was done while partnering with other departments and teams. At Eaton, Cobham, Tim was responsible for the delivery of all IT services, operations, and compliance to the business. Tim steered significant efforts by overseeing multiple departments' operations with a keen focus on monitoring developers, database administrators, network administrators, and service delivery personnel. Tim also focused on the fostering professional relationship with staff, cross-functional teams, suppliers, and vendors. So, Tim, we're really glad that you're here. Looks like you have brought your team to help discuss one of the most important items that are facing us. Tim's been here for about a month, 5 weeks, all right. And so far, he has attacked a list that has been haunting us for a while. And so, Tim, thanks for the work that you've put in so far. We're so glad you're here and look forward to hearing your very first presentation to the school board tonight on an incredibly important topic. So, welcome to Davenport Schools again, Tim. Thank you for being here. That concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. Move on to committee reports. Data Wall Ad Hoc Committee.
I'm sure we'll hear more about this later, but I want to thank everyone that was instrumental in getting this data wall up. This has been a vision since we were in the building across the street, but to now actually see one over here, I'm very thankful for everyone that participated.
Good. Thank you. Finance Committee.
We'll be meeting next week.
Thank you. LZAC.
We were originally scheduled to meet tomorrow, but I haven't seen an agenda, so I don't know. I don't think we're meeting this month. I think we'll pick back up again in October.
Thank you. Long Range Facilities Planning.
We have no report.
Policy Committee.
We are meeting on Wednesday.
Thank you. No new reports from legislative advocacy either. All right. We will move on to items requiring action. May I have a motion on subject 9.01 communications plan?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move the board approve adding the position of Program Director of Communications and Community Relations.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on this? Director Beck.
Yeah, I would love to get just sort of I know we've discussed the concept of our communications plan. Just curious if we have a general idea of salary range, qualifications, what type of person this is going to be, and what level in our organization exactly where this position will fit.
Sure. This is a program director level position. Jamie will give us the salary range here in a second. But inside of our organizational structure, the superintendent, cabinet, program director, this position will directly report to the superintendent. And this position will be the first one hired as the board gave the direction that this person should then set the tone for the importance of a communication plan, brand summit, putting together the RFP that will go out and look for the outside organization to partner with, and hiring an administrative assistant. Jamie, the salary information?
Sure, the range is anywhere from 140 to 159. The 159 is dependent upon your exorbitant years of experience and additional education and such.
One follow-up to that. And so are we looking at, I know we've talked in the past about how in many years ago we would tend to hire people who weren't necessarily had the right credentials for a position. So this is the kind of thing where we're looking for somebody with a specific degree in communications. Is that correct? Okay.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Director Potts.
What would be the estimated cost of the administrative assistant?
That is based on an hourly rate, so anywhere from $19.43 an hour to $26.37 an hour. depending upon experience and education.
Yes, that falls into roughly, if estimating, anywhere from the $45,000 to $60,000 range.
That would be an addition.
And what would that come to?
Well, we have 7% for FICA and IPERS. And then what do you have, Kevin, for benefits roughly?
Depends if it's single or family, but anywhere between 6 and 15,000 a year.
Anywhere from 6 to 15,000 a year, depending upon if it's single or family coverage and if they elect it.
Per person, 15 per?
If they take the full family,
So combined about another 30,000?
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Is that kind of somewhere in the neighborhood of $225,000 to $230,000?
Correct.
This would come from the general fund.
Correct.
Could I ask? I think the idea of having a contact person kind of came from Director Postian. And I was wondering, does this mirror what you sort of had in your mind when you were suggesting this?
What I had in mind is just that, a contact person that would work with the external communication team. This is going a little deeper than what I had in mind. I guess I would also like to know, but by the time you put this 200 to 225,000 on top of whatever the external team would cost, I know, Superintendent, you had some comparisons with some other school districts. Can we get those? Can we pull those figures up, or do you?
Absolutely. They are in the range of the other districts that we looked at. The other districts spend anywhere from $250,000 to $350,000. So with the external company not to exceed the $100,000 mark, probably, because it's been very clear that the board wants to do a brand summit and revamp our website, and each one of those are expensive right out of the chute. And so that the price tag for this would be somewhere in that $325,000 range. And that's comparable to the other UEN districts that we looked at. The districts that we looked at were Dubuque, Iowa City, Cedar Rapids, Council Bluffs. One more. Iowa City. Des Moines, not like us. Sioux City.
So you're saying with these two positions, there would only be another 100,000 on top of that from the external company?
To start with, I think that's what the minimum piece of it would be to do. The last time we had a website rebranding, it cost $50,000, roughly estimated. And then a brand summit on top of that was, I think, ballpark anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000. Now, this would be less than that because our brand is already there. It would just be probably a redirection of our brand. But we want to be on top of that. We still need to do commercials and videos and high quality productions when necessary.
Does that answer, so I can move on to Director Posher and someone else have it? I didn't want to, okay. And you already had your hand up, Director Posher.
And that was just exactly what I was going to ask. To me, this is going a little farther than what I had imagined, but I'll defer to the rest of the board as far as what their feelings are. My thought was that the person that's employed by the school district would be more of a person that is going to get the information to the external source and make sure that they're finding what needs to be done rather than possibly controlling the whole thing. But again, I'll listen to the other comments.
So in response to that, this plan is built with the notion that you would have somebody at the director level that can put together a plan that has excellent knowledge of communications and community relations, and would then have the ability at some point down the road, if necessary, to bring the communication department back inside. If you get somebody that's the liaison between the external portion, then at the time you decide to move the communication department back inside, you would go out and hire the director level position for that. So this sets it up to where our external partners can help feed us, but the direction comes from the people inside. And that was an overwhelming theme that came from the board. That's why the administration is recommending this pathway.
Director Beck, I think you had your hand up too.
Yeah, so I guess one thing was that, you know, for example, like the website, you said, you know, we already have our brand. I don't think nobody wants to change that right now. And it's not like the website itself. I mean, I guess, do you have to start over from scratch, or is this a thing where somebody can tinker with what's there, so it wouldn't cost as much as building something brand new? I don't know how this.
No, correct. It's not a brand new reboot of
Okay.
the website, but to have someone go through it, clean
It's
it up
gonna take a while.
completely the way that you
Yeah.
and the rest of the board are giving the feedback to, it would take an extensive amount of time with an internal and external partner.
Okay. Is that something that we could do on a contract basis, right? Where we hire, just to, you know, do that one piece on a contract basis, so it's an outlay at the beginning, but then we have the people to maintain it afterwards. I guess I also, you know, I like the idea here, but I'm also a little bit leery of the cost as well. I don't want it to balloon. And so, you know, just sort of thinking of ways, I want to do things well and I want to do things right, but I also want to be smart about it with taxpayer money, because that's what we're talking about here. So, but I am not an expert in any of this, so I don't really know what it takes.
What you're describing is exactly what I'm proposing here. The not to exceed number just gives us the ability to move forward for a 1-year basis and continue to create videos, create content, you know.
Director Barnes.
I just want to thank the administration for putting this proposal forward, which I do think has the potential of serving the needs of the district. We've spent an awful lot of time just in my short time with the board talking about the importance of improved communication. I think that this particular configuration can serve as the catalyst to make the improvements that we need to the website. You've got an internal champion working with external parties to make sure that we get what we need in order to serve our public. And that's the most important thing. I too share everyone's concern about cost and another administrative position, but as we discussed at our last meeting, looking at the very talented cabinet across the way, having another cabinet position that has somebody who is responsible for communication on behalf of this district, I think is very important and timely, given how much time we've spent on communication.
Is there any other discussion? Director Beck.
I just want to clarify what we're being asked to take action on is this proposal, not any specific numbers but a proposal to create a position, which we would then find out exact numbers, qualifications needed, that kind of thing.
It is in our policy that if we create another administrative position, the board has to vote on it. So this is following our policy.
Any other discussion on this? Well, you still had the, go ahead, Director Beck.
One other question. Have we had anyone who is in communications take a look at this, like an outside expert? Or another district who has gone through this type of process just to, so we have, just a second set of eyes. Yes, you guys are heading in the right direction, or no, you're asking for the wrong thing, or.
With this, I'm very confident in the job description that Jamie put together, because Jamie, coming from the industry where this is a very prevalent position, she put that together. Jamie, you have anything to add?
Sure. So when I was pulling that together, I did reach out to other UENs to get copies of their job descriptions to see what they were utilizing, as well as going out to the market and seeing what, comparative positions look like in a general market. So it was research based on what that looks like.
Any other discussion? I just want to say I appreciate the board's time. I think we spent several meetings kind of going over this stuff to get this stuff kind of hammered out. So, Director Potts.
Help me. My brain is, I'm seeing this position as overhead cost as opposed to service delivery. If that's not correct, correct me.
This position will be a boots on the ground, generating stories, generating content, and also working with the cabinet to drive the direction of the district. That's why this is not a cabinet level position, but a program director. Program directors this is in line with a high school principal. This salary, this action is in line with the high school principal. So think about the action that a high school principal would take and the movement that they could do. That's where this workload fits. We could go a different route. We could do a specialist, but what we think is it takes a leader. It takes somebody that will be in the buildings, dedicating the stories. So envision somebody that is out in the buildings, potentially taking their administrative assistant, capturing the pictures, writing the stories, and then posting it all to the social media aspects, and then working with the exterior partners saying, this is a story, writing the day-to-day, writing the media releases, so this person's going to have an extreme writing ability to write, the ability to set the direction, ability to navigate, work with community partners. So that's where you think about the program directors inside of our district, Tim Bellman, you think of Lisa Baxter. When we had a crisis, like for example, the crisis that we had over the weekend, Lisa Baxter is the one there managing that crisis in the building, organizing the counselors, organizing the social workers, not sending someone else to do the work. And I think that's a clear distinction between what a cabinet member would do, and we do get our hands dirty and in the buildings and do those some things, but a program director is specifically that.
Director Hayes.
So again, for clarity, we're voting to add these positions. Depending on whether or not that goes, how long, what is the timeline for advertising, and when will we go forward with that?
So the very first thing that we would do is we would post this position this week. So if the board approves, we would post this position. It would probably take 2 weeks to have the position posted. And then after that, we would do interviews. That would probably be another 2 weeks to do the reference checks. And then after that, if the successful candidate accepts, they're probably coming from an outside, from the market, then that'll take probably 2 or 3 weeks to give their employer a notice. And then after that, that person will be hired and begin to work on the next two things: hire an administrative assistant, and also working on the RFP and going out for RFP to partner with the Davenport schools. So I would say a goal to have somebody hired by November, and the RFP process going out maybe by January would be a goal to set for moving back inside.
Any other discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 9.02, contract with Bray Architects to design high school turf fields?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move the board approve the contract with Bray Architects for design of the artificial turf fields at Central, North, and West High Schools in the amount of $721,584.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion on this? Director Poston.
So I just want to be clear. We're putting a lot of money into these turf fields for all three high schools, which I think are good. But my concern is right now we only have a halftime AD. If we're going to put this kind of money into our facilities, we need a full-time AD. I think we've had the discussion before, and that's going to happen down the road. But I think the sooner the better. We need a full-time AD. We also need that AD also needs to be a champion for our students. We need more participation of our students in all extracurricular activities. We've got to get our kids away from burying their noses in computers and cell phones. These kids need to learn how to be team members. They need to learn how to work as a team. They need to have more social skills. And the only way we're going to be able to do that, or part of the way of doing that, is getting involved in extracurricular activities, whether it's sports or band or show choir or whatever. I'm appalled at the lack of the number of students that we have involved in the activities. We are spending a ton of money to provide this for the students, and we've got to have people that are going to showcase this and really go after our students to participate in all these activities.
Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. So for this next one, I'm going to ask for the motion in a second, and then the administration has a presentation before we get into discussion and everything. May I have a motion on subject 9.03 Sudlow project?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move the board approve the adjustments to the long-range facility plan to include new facilities instead of expansion and renovation at Sudlow Middle School.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We'll turn it over to the administration before we go into discussion.
At our last meeting, the board had a lot of questions before entering into this, so I want to thank Josh and John for putting together a presentation to address those things. While tonight we're asking very specifically to adjust the first phase of the long-range facility plan, but the board had questions about the first and second parts of the first phase. And so we asked John and Josh to put together a presentation. So this kind of explains and describes what the potential impacts for the second phase, specifically SMART, if we do decide to go down this route. And is this something we're going to run into in the second phase of the first phase for long-range facility plan? So thank you guys for putting that together. Josh?
Thank you for hearing us and our information. And I think you'll find what John has to say here very interesting, and it'll give us good food for thought. Hopefully the outcome is good.
So thank you for
taking the time to look at this. I kept a lot of the format of what we looked at a couple weeks ago, just for any of the community members that are watching who might not have been able to understand what we're talking about. I just wanted some of that background. So what we're talking about is two of our initial projects in the first phase of work pertain to the adaptation of Sudlow and Smart current intermediate schools to be adapted into middle schools. Our first phase of projects was projected to run in the range of $146 to $154 million. There's a lot of significant work happening in the district, but the work at the middle schools was critical because while these buildings have previously been middle schools, they have been built out to house additional programs and services and other resources that occupy spaces that weren't necessarily constructed to house those. The other big thing is there was a big push to begin adapting a house model into the middle school academic structure, which as Mr. Flynn would say over here at the cabinet table, it's taking a big building and making it smaller. And so it is taking each of the grade levels and building in 2 houses per grade level, which creates a cohort of students that is much smaller, which should improve the academic performance and the student-teacher engagement through those buildings. This was identified to occur at Smart and Sudlow both, and those were identified to be buildings that were approached in the initial phase of work under the master plan. Some of the work is related to expanded classroom space, support spaces that are needed to house the number of students that are going to be in these buildings. At Sudlow, it was very critical that we maintain the Creative Arts Academy, which does create an imposition on other space uses in the building. For the Sudlow project, it requires that the Washington Elementary building does move. Originally, we had discussed that this was a nearly 173,000 square foot programmatic need for space, and that was ringing in at about $57.6 million. As we dug in deeper through the initial efforts, we found that that space burden went down. So we're in the 160,000 square foot range, and that cost is coming down a little bit. But as the district leadership challenged, if we're going to spend that much money, how much disparity is there between new construction and this renovation and expansion of the existing? And so we dug in and did a little bit of study, and it turned out that a new building would range in the cost of 66 to 68 million. However, if we built off the existing gym, keep the existing Sudlow gym, and provide a new addition alongside that, we could come in the range of 61.5 to 63 million. So we're now only a couple of $1 million above that projected construction cost for addition renovation. So as we talked last time, there are some pros and cons. The addition and remodeling pros are we're maintaining that historically significant building. We do work around the prior investment, which is in that campus, and there is a lower initial cost of construction. The cons are that not every space is getting improved under this plan. There's not enough budget to remodel the whole building. Site logistics remain largely unchanged, and there are challenges to achieving full ADA accessibility, and there are challenges given the room sizes and configuration of the existing building. With the mostly new construction or all new construction, we would provide all new areas except for the existing gymnasium, which becomes reused. It does allow an improvement to the room size and configuration, which better meets the needs of the house configuration. The entire investment that is being made is distributed into new construction. It would be ADA accessible, code compliant. We could work to resolve some of the difficulties with site logistics, and likely this would be a shorter duration of construction which would have less of an impact on the student learning experience because there would not be disruptions to the existing academic space that would have to be remodeled while the building is occupied. Yes, we would have to remove the existing historic portion of the building, and we will likely have to move some of the geothermal wells. The site area is difficult. It is a long, narrow site, but we feel that there's a good strategy for meeting this. At the time we discussed this 2 weeks ago, the board asked the question, if we're talking about this at Sudlow, what is the conversation then for SMART? So we did a deep dive as quick as we could and found that it was a very similar consideration. One big difference is SMART does not have the Creative Arts Academy, so there's not a portion of building being taken by that specific program. However, the initial building program identified a programmatic need of 138,000 square feet of space for the project. This gave us an approximate cost of about $51.5 million. When we started digging in and discussing with the building staff, bringing in sixth grade and planning for the needs for the house construction and some of the programs and services in this building, we found that the true need is less. It's in the 127,000 square foot range, which actually brings that target cost down to anywhere from 49 to 51 million. Keep in mind, this is very early. This is a project that's still 6 to 8 months away from us starting. So we wanted to look at a range of costs because we don't specifically know everything about this, but we feel that that project cost is coming down. So to apply the same logic as Sudlow, could we either A, construct a brand new standalone building, or could we keep that existing gym and provide a new addition alongside that? And yes, we can. We can use the same type of strategy in either way, and those costs look a lot like what we talked about with Sudlow. So for $55 to $57.5 million, we could construct a new standalone facility. However, if we kept the existing gym and provide a mostly new building alongside that, we're talking $52 to $54 million, which, if you recall, the current projected project cost in that $49 to $51 million range, we're just a couple million more to employ the same kind of strategy that's being discussed for Sudlow. That has a lot of the same pros and cons that we talk about for Sudlow, nearly all of the same pros and cons. The only difference with if you went with a completely new standalone building, it could be constructed on the Monroe site, and then the current SMART building site could be adapted into hardscape and green space. However, if we do an addition and keep the gymnasium, that could be constructed alongside, and it still is something that could be done that reduces the disruption to the student learning experience while phasing construction. There were a couple other questions that were asked by the board when we talked about the Sudlow project. One was, what are some of the operating costs for this current Sudlow building? You're currently spending about $160,000 annually for your lights, power, supplies, materials that keep that building going. If you use that as a baseline cost and apply the addition and renovation to that, you're likely going to be something in the range of $250,000 a year in annualized expense on that building. So it will go up. You're adding more square footage. There's more to maintain. There's more to put lights and power and heating and cooling on. However, you do gain the benefit of efficiency when you provide new construction. And so if you looked at it simply as a completely new building, that projected annualized cost is something south of 200,000. Our best guess was around $191,000. It is important to note, though, that when you provide new construction, a good portion of your maintenance and repair work is going to be deferred for somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 years. And that's because your water heaters, rooftop equipment, some of your major apparatus most of it is going to have a warranted life of 10 to 20 years. And so we expect that it would be 10 years or greater before you start seeing some of those maintenance and repair costs. That has a few exceptions, but a lot of those exceptions are covered by district staff, such as replacing caulk or some minor change of batteries on pieces of equipment. Hopefully that explains the maintenance and operating expense review. Fixtures, furnishings, and equipment. It was asked if in these budgets that if that is a number that's covered in these estimates, and yes, that was. There is a line item cost for each project that includes fixtures and furnishings, so that would be desk, chairs, teacher stations. There's a separate line item that covers technology, and that technology is the phones, paging systems, bell systems, smart boards. So there is a cost attributed to these projects that covers what we feel would be the need for the fixtures, furnishings, and equipment for this building to be turnkey. And then it was important to note that these projects don't include a construction manager fee basis. This is intended to be a general construction bid. So this is a competitively bid project in the open market. If the district was to consider a construction management service, typically there's a fee that gets applied on top, which elevates the level of cost that we're talking about. So I ran through that really fast. I do hope that adds some clarity to what we were talking about. However, Josh and I are here to ask or answer any questions that you might have to ask.
Now we'll come to discussion. Is there any discussion? Director Hayes.
Question, thank you for the explanation. Could you tell us approximately how much more the fee would be for the construction manager, approximately?
That's a hard one to speculate. President Gosa, do you have an idea?
Myself personally, I would never ever advise a construction manager because it's not what you think it is. You're paying someone to manage the project. That's what we had at Central. They have no skin in the game.
My best guess is anywhere, it wildly varies, but you could see anywhere from 3 to 9% as a fee, depending on the scale, complexity, and duration of the project. Correct.
Director Beck.
Thanks for answering so many of our questions. I have two, actually three. Number one, does SMART not have geothermal? I didn't see anything about it in that estimate, and I know that was one of the issues with Sudlow is, building new, you have to dig. Building old, you could potentially reuse the pits, but the equipment was out of date. And
I don't believe it does.
okay, so that would be a new cost then, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I'm not certain of that, but I'm fairly certain it doesn't have geothermal. But
Okay, is that included? Would that be included in this, the cost of doing?
So for these costs, we'll need to understand what the district target wants to be for sustainable approach and renewable sources. As it relates to SMART, one of the questions would be whether there is a geothermal there, but that's a very tight location. I'm not for sure that exists on that property at all.
Okay. And then, so my second question was basically, so when you say deferred maintenance, literally like none of those costs that you listed there for the initial warranty periods of all the equipment and things like that. So essentially, like, we don't have to factor that in for.
We shouldn't have to. I mean, generally speaking, your rooftop units, your boilers, toilets, sinks, I mean, fixtures, just stuff you would change out on an older building. You're always kind of ongoing with it because it's just ongoing maintenance. You shouldn't have to touch for a solid 5 to 10 years for sure.
Okay.
And you think about time and material and all that stuff involved and all those things, it adds up. You're gonna have to do some painting touch up where you hit a wall, things like that.
Yeah. Okay. And then my last question. So with both projects, I know part of the reason we wanted information on both projects is sort of the equity question. And so given the fact that they are both very large projects, is it ideal to do sort of like one and then the other, or can you do mostly Sudlow and maybe start on some smart stuff, or depending on what we decide to go with, or is it you have to do one project and then you go to the next project? I guess I'm trying to figure out how long it'll take for both, for that equity piece to kind of fall.
Yeah. Our best recommendation was to give about a 6-month delay between projects. And the reason being is the workforce, the labor workforce can be easily saturated in this market. And that's not just Davenport Schools projects, that's any other district or sizable endeavor that's happening in the local community. We want to be careful not to overburden the workforce, which effectively could either raise the costs of the project or it could delay the duration of construction. So we're going to try to time that out to hopefully create enough pause that workforce could get done with some of the substantial project load that happens early in the year, and then move into the smart and hopefully keep that moving well.
Is there any other discussion? Oh, Director Klein-Durham.
In looking at Sudlow, would it be still a three-level building? We consider the basement, but
That would be up for debate. However, we have come to find that the 3-story construction is more economically advantageous than 2. Mostly, you make a more compact footprint, so it reduces the amount of roof area. Your structure is going to be developed for multi-story anyway, so it becomes pretty efficient that way. But the other benefit that we've been discussing is that it would allow for, in that house approach, you could have a striation of 6th, 7th, 8th, or the inverse for that house approach at Sudlow.
also when was the last time the roof was replaced at Sudlow?
Sudlow's roof was replaced. Part of it was in 1999, and the other part was 2022 or 2002. So 20.
So it's coming up to needing
It's
replacement.
over 20 years old, pretty much everywhere.
Thank you.
Any other, Director Potts?
Here, Bruce.
I'll just talk loud. So we have no idea what, if we're looking at a 6-month delay on one of the projects, delivery of materials and increase in costs of materials, we have no way to figure that in.
There's factors for inflation and escalation and material costs built into the estimates, hopefully to cover those concerns.
So if I've interpreted your numbers correctly, the cost difference is about $7 to $8 million more to build new than remodel between the two combined.
2 combined, correct.
Okay, and that would mean that $7 or $8 million we wouldn't have to do other things on our list. Okay, and I don't think that we are very optimistic that a bond referendum is in our near future, because we need 60% yes vote on a bond referendum. So, and we've spent what, 25 million or more on Sudlow and Smart since about 2000 on the improvements we put in those buildings, and they would go with the wrecking ball.
That is correct.
I think if anybody else says that, I got a lot to say, but as I had said the last time, I said this new plan is not in our long range facility plan that we generated and vetted with the public. It's not what was given to us from our massive community committee that worked on these things. And we've done some very big things in terms of closing schools and, with the support of the public. We were able to educate the public to understand that we have too many buildings. And I think we know as a board, down the road, we're going to have to make some more of those kinds of decisions. And it concerns me that if we're changing horses here in midstream and tearing down 2 buildings, that we didn't tell anybody that was really in the plan until 2 weeks ago, that we may be mortgaging our goodwill and mortgaging the trust the public has in us as a board to do what we say we are going to do. I can envision some members of the public saying that this is a bait and switch. You said you were going to do this, and now you're going to do that. And I just don't think I don't think it maintains the covenant we established with our communities. I also just don't think just because the building's old, we ought to knock it down. I mean, you wouldn't knock Old Main down over at Augustana just because it's an old library. I said that on purpose. Yeah. Or St. Ambrose wouldn't knock down that huge brick building in the middle of campus, the name of which I have no idea, because it's old. It's not the age of the building. It's not the building. It's the people in the building and the services they deliver that create the education that kids need.
Was there any other discussion? Director Posture?
Well, I agree with Bruce from the standpoint of what we set out to do. The only issue that I have is, do we put that much money into a 100-year-old building? And so I'm wrestling with that. My other concern is what we're going to run into as we tear into the main part of the building, as far as any overages or anything like that. So I'm really having a tough time with this. I think with a new building, there's more things we can do from the standpoint of having a nicer facility for the students, but we're also talking about a lot of money. Would it be out of order if we could have the Sudlow principal come up here and give us her thoughts?
Yes, I think she's willing to come up. I know that this team has been working closely with Tanya and a group of teachers from the building. So there is a perspective. So if Mrs. Wilkins wouldn't mind coming up and sharing the process that you've gone through and the perspective of the teachers in the buildings that you represent.
Real quick before she goes, I wanted a clarifying question. Director Potts had mentioned there have been improvements at Sudlow. Can you, while she's doing that, can you look those up when they were done and what was done to them? Because, I mean, if it's like a bathroom upgrade, you have to do that every so often anyway. Right, but that would stay. Yeah. If you could do that while she's doing that, thank you.
Voices, it's very loud, sorry. I have talked to kids, I have talked to staff that have been there for a number of years. The kids, of course, are disappointed because they will not be there by the time all of this shakes out. So just as this is my 7th year at Sudlow, and there are some things that have happened while I've been there. For instance, they added a new office. So that would be the most recent construction that's happened. And then we also have an outside classroom that has also come into existence. I would say that the teachers are looking at the changes that would happen while we are trying to, first of all, we have to make some adjustments to get our 6th graders in. That's about 9 classrooms that we would need to find space for. And then the next steps would be beginning the construction at that time. So they see a huge disruption to what their lives would look like and how much that would change for them coming every day while we're trying to do the construction. So those are some pieces to it. And then just even when we've had lots of conversations about this, the middle school concept, and then, thinking 10 years from now, how things have changed from 10 years ago to now, and then what the potential is to look like in 10 years from now, and how we need to be a little bit more thoughtful in the spaces that we create. I will say our current classrooms do not allow for some of the expectations that we've put on the teachers. So when we have classes of 30 plus, it's very difficult to move around. I don't know what the previous square footage was expected for middle schoolers, but I would say our middle schoolers have changed over the years, and they need a lot more space because when you take a middle schooler and you compact that space, they're very impulsive and touchy. And so they're just kind of all over each other. And now when you've created this space where they are even closer together, it makes it difficult. So the idea that they would have some room to move around, and there are spaces there, classrooms there that are large, that are awesome. And they have some movement that you can add to a teacher's day, a student's day. Some of our current classrooms, they're just small. They're really tiny. And now adding 6th grade into our hallways back again, and it just will. It's just going to have to look a little bit different, but it just compacts everything in there. So I don't know if I completely, I would say every teacher that I have come in contact with or chatted with just about the possibility, because that's what I've told them, what would it look like if it was either or? Every single one of them said new, build new. It would be great for this community. It'd be great for our kids because it is inner city. So those were some pieces that they really saw a lot of benefits, and they said our kids deserve it. And I thought that was pretty pertinent to what we're looking at right now. I also think junior high, middle school, whatever we want to call it, has changed so much. And I think the idea of having that be right there on the edge of town, right there on Locust Street, I think really says that we've invested into our kids, and especially into the middle school. Not that we feel like the redheaded stepchild, but we sometimes feel like we're the lost ones, and this really feels like it's an investment with us. So I guess I'm speaking for our teachers, our staff, and some of our kids, even though they would be envious of not being able to access the new facilities. So that's where we're at right now.
And I know you haven't spoken to all the parents, but have you heard from any of the parents on this?
So I haven't. I guess I was treading lightly because I wasn't certain that we were This was open for me to share that. That was the part that I wasn't sure. You know, it was just kind of a conversation, like, what would this look like? So I guess I didn't want to push that out to families without the possibility that it could even happen. I will say for every piece that we've ever constructed, especially like our outdoor classroom, pulling kids in, asking kids has been my number one piece. I think it's insightful. I think it's really kind of cool that kids can say they contributed to it, and to get their feedback on it, on how what they would do with that space, and what that would look like. So going forward, regardless of what we decide to do, I would solicit our students to be a part of something like that.
Did that answer your question, Director Poston?
Thank you.
I can answer as far as the information that we have as to what projects were completed at what time. 2017 was the office secure entry addition and renovation. 2011, there was a climate control project, which is basically air conditioning, heating, ventilating. 2007 was a locker replacement project. 2002 was some parking lot paving, and 2001 was the gymnasium addition. That would be the piece that we were looking to maintain. The next recorded projects were 1980, 83, 84, and then prior to that, it was well into the 50s, 60s, and 70s.
Just to sum up, you said the last major project was 2017, so what, 6 years ago? And before that, it was like 2011?
2011 would have been climate control, correct?
Okay, so it's been over a decade for
Correct.
that, for the next most recent. Okay.
Correct.
Director Poston?
Do you have a dollar figure like on the 2017, 2011, and 2007 projects?
I was trying to find that. I couldn't find it.
Okay.
Is there any other discussion? Director Beck?
I guess, yeah, I'm like Director Poston, I'm kind of torn as to what to think about doing with this, because as Director Potts said, we've done some big things and we've been successful so far. It all boils down to what's best for the kids. I think, I guess if I could get, you know, I'm kind of doing the math here, but I guess, do we have an idea of, in terms of SMART, the same thing, like when are the most recent major construction projects? Because to be honest, what I'm hearing, we haven't put in a significant investment to Sudlow, you know, other than the secure entry, which every school got some version of in quite some time. And so, you know, that certainly flavors my decisions a little bit.
I don't have the same listing for SMART. However, the gymnasium piece would have been in that same era, 2001, 2002. There were some exterior site improvements earlier or much more recently, but I don't believe we've had the same level of improvement at SMART that we've seen at Sudlow.
Director Barnes?
This is a valuable discussion. I also share some reservation just from the standpoint of a conversation with the public. I firmly believe that there's probably incredible value to new construction for a whole host of reasons. And there's probably, we get a much better bang for our buck But I do think that we need to think about the timing of the conversation with the public and how to ensure that we, as Director Potts has said, maintain the trust of the public. Again, I want to be clear that I think investment in SMART and Sudlow is important for the district, important for our students. But it does sort of feel like this came up fairly quickly, and that maybe being able to make the case with the public that this new construction investment is good for everyone and has long-term benefits as you think about the deferred and identified maintenance with two very, very old buildings. Having new construction seems very compelling.
Superintendent Schneck.
These are very valid concerns. The reason why we felt compelled to bring this forward to the board is as we are going through and starting to plan with the building level leaders, we got to a point where we realized that when we build the additions and begin to remodel the interior, that we would have to stop at approximately 75% of the inside of the original building, which in then terms in the second phase of the first phase, we would go to SMART and do the same thing. Those renovations to finish out the inside of SMART would be SMART and Sudlow would be more than the equivalent of the build. We did not want the school board to be left holding the decision. Why didn't you at least talk or discuss about building new when now you've got to come back and do the additions and the remodels? For us, we want the inside of Sudlow to be just as nice as the hallways that are around here and the classrooms and the spaces and the renovated. This is what we want that to look like. And so we know that this is a difficult position, and we would not be bringing it forward as someone that went through all of those master planning, all of those discussions, if it weren't still in line with the vision of rebooting, remodeling those buildings on those spots. One of the reasons why I think those building new got put away very quickly is because we were building on brand new sites and moving where the educational experience was to enhance a regional approach. The community was very clear that they did not want that. So we felt that it was very important to bring this forward to the board immediately to get the direction. We are willing to get that direction from the board, and the board voted to approve this, so we felt like it would be an action item. If we back down and move in the direction of seeking some community input, things of that nature, what it would do is it would take our long-range facility plan and move it back probably several months. And also the thing to consider is that being a school, there are seasons for the construction. So those are the reasons why the administration brought this forward right now, knowing very well this is a very difficult decision. But if we didn't bring this forward and kept moving with the direction that the long-range facility was going, we felt like we would have been doing the school board and the community a disservice.
Director Kleindro.
I also am struggling with this. Just because it's old to me doesn't mean it comes down, but I understand attaching to it as we're going to vote later. West High had we didn't know about this situation. The energy efficiency, I get all that, but what kind of problem would it cause if we delayed this decision for 2 weeks and had some parent meetings or public meetings at Sudlow, McKinley, Eisenhower, Garfield, some of the schools that feed into it, to at least get those parents' input on this? I mean, was a 2-week delay going to create that much of a problem? And could we even get the meetings pulled together in 2 weeks?
A delay, given the fact that we're having these conversations continually right now, best guess is we're 2.5 to 3 months behind overall schedule by the time we pick up the work and get moving again. So that 2-week piece likely is going to be having us putting the project out to bid, and this is just kind of working in my head, but sometime close to end of school year for the 23-24 school year, which means we would start construction later in the summer. There's a period of time that's required to procure materials before we start. The other issue is then that would probably push back that SMART schedule a little bit as well, because you'd want to have enough separation between those projects going to market that we feel that they would get good coverage in the bid market. So we'd have to understand what the implications of that domino tip does to the timeline, but I feel like it pushes those two projects consecutively backward a little bit.
Director Barnes.
I want to just take a moment to clarify. I guess what I feel like we haven't had the opportunity to do or the time to do is to make the case for why spending more on new construction is good for our students and good for our public. That's where I am more so than anything else. I mean, I just think that the value is there. Having the time to make that case would be helpful. I don't know that it has to take forever in trying to do that. I think that there have been some very compelling reasons presented that new construction would make sense for the school district. It's just that it doesn't seem like we've had a lot of runway to make that case.
So as part of the planning and design process, there would be community engagement that occurs as a part of this, not widespread across the whole city of Davenport, but the community that is participant to the Sudlow and SMART experience. So we would have meetings that engage the parents and families of students at Sudlow and at SMART, and that is intended to create an understanding of the changes that are happening there, because those do impact their children that are attending those buildings, but also it helps create excitement, especially for a building where, as our principal said, people sometimes feel like they've been left behind. No matter which project you pick, we want to create some charge and some momentum for the people that are participating in those facilities. Those meetings start with the staff. So we do all staff development, where we get them a little bit more informed about what the process is and what the changes are. And then we do more specific user group meetings with that staff, but those staff is a prime conduit to your families that send their kids to the school. We want those staff members to be talking to the parents of the children. We want them to be talking to their friends and neighbors about this. We can also host some, so to speak, town hall type events at the school. It's a really nice thing when there's a school open house to present something about the changes here. So as Director Barnes is referring to, you do have opportunities through the whole process to create that awareness of what's happening and why. As I stated when we made this initial presentation a couple of weeks ago, we presented this as a turn left or turn right, and your solution for either turn is going to be beautiful and wonderful for that campus. So it is a difficult decision. We understand that. There's a lot to consider. There will be opportunities for more information along the way, and we do feel that the solution, no matter what, will be positive for the learning experience for the students there.
Were you asking questions? Or are you gonna try to table it? Because I got some stuff I want to say. I knew what you were going for. Before I let you do that, I'll get my part in. Can you go back to the slide where, and I was the one that asked for the information on what the cost of running the facility is. And Director Barnes, you had asked about where the direct impact is on the savings alone to the general fund, that could pay for interventionists or whatever. That's long-term standing money you're saving. And when you save, this stuff all gets paid out of the general fund, and when you save that money, that's where our impact is in the classroom, 100%. I'm a little biased on some of this stuff because I actually work construction and I see how this stuff goes all the time. But the part that makes me nervous on the remodel is it sounds like it needs a new roof on the gym, because that should be coming up, a new roof on the building. That's quite a bit of money right there. That's your probably $7 million right there alone, with having to move rooftop units off, redo it and everything like that. And I know people don't think about that cost. My biggest thing is the impact that we can make to the general fund, because again, the general fund is what pays for everything and drives everything. And if we're able to, especially when you're talking about the classrooms, I just can't imagine that, and it's like sardines in a can, and I get it. If we're able to start doing some of that stuff again, old buildings are great, but old buildings were built for what they were back then. And if they can be remodeled, you know, with less money and things like that, but that never happens because you run into a lot of unknown factors, as we're going to talk about in a little bit here. So I get that point. My biggest driving factor for me is that cost to the general fund, and I know it's a little upfront, but it saves in the long run. And I appreciate you putting that stuff together. I'm glad you guys put the stuff together for SMART, because it sounds like the same thing. And again, to be real honest, I feel embarrassed that that school only had minor upgrades within that amount of time. That's embarrassing. Some of those upgrades were done before I was alive. No offense to anybody here, but that's embarrassing. It really is. And I'm assuming SMART's the same way, and we need to start doing stuff for those communities, because we all say schools are their own little communities, and if we can give you a good school, it'll help grow that community too. So I'll give you some resources. Does anyone have any other discussion? Director Beck?
Okay. My only other question right now is, so we're slated to do our demolition projects. You know, the timeline is in the next few months. Will we be able to make the improvements to the grounds that we've talked about? Like, for example, Sudlow has, you know, we talked about potentially putting in a small track or something like that. And the same at SMART, right? Are those improvements that are small enough that we could fit them into sort of the existing green space, no matter which direction we go, assuming that the demolitions go okay? I'm not thinking of like a full track facility or a full, you know, whatever. I'm thinking of something that will serve a purpose, whether it be an outdoor play area or, you know, a hardscape or whatever, that doesn't necessarily have to be there forever and ever and ever, but.
Correct. There would be site improvements for both campuses. When Monroe is demolished, there is some walking track piece there. We're going to leave as much of that intact as we can. We'll try to patch what we can as best as possible. For Sudlow, part of that would depend on what direction we go, but there is opportunity to create some site improvement ahead of the construction of the building if we felt that it was advantageous to break out site work separately. That's completely possible.
Okay, I'm just thinking in terms of you know, sort of immediate needs versus, and also things that can have an immediate impact no matter what direction we go with the construction.
Director Barnes?
So the case for new construction, I just want to make sure that I'm clear on this. Less disruption to ongoing student learning, because all of the new construction is going to be away from the existing facility. So that daily experience for our students is much less disruptive. Second, everything is going to be with, as the principal has said, the future in mind. We're going to design spaces that are focused on student learning of today and the future. Correct. Fewer unknowns because when you've got new construction costs, you don't. I find out that there's some issue with the existing building that was unanticipated or undiscovered until you got through the 4 layers of existing renovation. Fourth thing, everything gets addressed, right? I mean, did I hear correctly that only about 3/4 of the existing buildings were likely to be ultimately addressed, and maybe the rest of it was going to be light touch? And then maybe the fifth thing is that this is a huge boost for our middle schools by addressing both of them. Is that the case for new construction versus renovation? I mean, I heard left turn, right turn, and both could be a great result, but we're spending an awful lot of time talking about the new construction. Is that a fairly accurate summary of why new construction is good for our students and district?
I believe that's a fair summary, and I believe that encapsulates some of the reason that drove the initial question to begin with.
Director Beck.
Sorry, one last clarifying question. In the Sudlow case, what we're discussing with new construction keeps the gym, correct?
Our recommendation would be to keep the gym only because that helps offset some of the increase in expense. So by keeping that gym, you're still trying to keep some of the costs down.
Yeah.
Completely standalone building with all new gyms is a significant increase, and we're
Right.
still trying to be mindful of the overall budget of
Right.
the district.
And then at Smart, was there a gym to keep as well?
Correct.
Okay. So we're not we're talking about at least keeping that component in both cases.
Correct.
Okay.
Director Klein-Jerome.
Thank you. I move to postpone the motion to the next regular meeting. Postpone the motion to the next regular meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
I think at least 2 weeks would give us some time.
Can I call for discussion and then?
Oh, sure.
Is there any discussion? Director Klein-Jerome.
Thank you. It would allow us time. I mean, it's a short amount of time, but to get the information out to Eisenhower, Garfield, McKinley. I'm not sure who else feeds in, some Madison, whatever feeder schools go into Sudlow, get the information out so parents understand kind of, as Director Barnes said, here's what would be the benefits of having new construction. And I don't even care if you say, and these are the downsides of just adding on, you know, however it's presented. At least they know now, because as Director Potts says, we never talked a whole new building before. And if you aren't watching the board meeting, I never saw this in the Quad City Times, I never saw this anywhere else. And people don't always follow this. I think we owe it to them to at least know what's going on before we take this vote.
Any other discussion on the motion to table? Not table, to postpone. Sorry. Thank you, Brenda. Scratch that from the record. The only thing I would ask for, and I know it's going to be a stretch, can you look into, because I know there's a ton of work coming up. I know you got the Interstate 80, a bunch of stuff, projects that are coming up, so we can kind of know the manpower that's going to be around, because I know there's a lot booming here real quick. So if you could have that, because the longer we delay things, the more we're going to put ourselves out. And that's Director Beck.
So with Director Klein-Jerome's proposal, are you imagining like just putting in an e-blast, like, you know, after discussion on costs for renovation, it was discovered that it could potentially be more, you know, a better option to build new, and just sending that out sort of as a blanket notice to the district, and then, you know, inviting comment certainly at our next meeting. But is that kind of what you're thinking about in terms of by
Well,
postponing it?
I'm not sure how parents, if an email is the way they're going to get it, a paper copy, they're going to get it. Me, I'm old school. I take the paper copy, but whatever you think the best way to get the information out to people.
I'm confident in the ability to gather information that Bray has shown so far. So I'm sure that we can put together a plan. If it's not feasible to do at the next regular meeting, then we'll do it. We'll take the time necessary to gather the information that the board needs. So I believe that we can gather that information in a timely manner and bring the results back to the school board. For feedback from the school board, if we do successfully come back with information stating either direction, would an action item at the next regular board meeting be appropriate? That's what we're doing. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Well, the motion's to postpone, so we have to wait.
Excellent. Thank you.
Director Beck?
Yeah, one last question. Would it be possible to, like, it was super valuable from here to hear from Tanya here about Sudlow. Would it be possible, and it can be in 2 weeks at the next regular meeting, to have the principal of Monroe give us sort of the same perspective? I mean, not Monroe, sorry. Smart. I don't know, my brain is, I know, it's not a middle school. And it's empty.
I would think though, since SMART is at least 6-8 months down the road, let's just focus on one building at this time.
Okay, that's fine. I guess maybe for the future.
All right, seeing no more discussion, I am going to call for the vote on the motion to postpone the motion until the next regular meeting. Everyone got that? I even said it right. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries to postpone the motion until the next regular meeting. And we're going to take a quick 5-minute break.
mine's still showing nothing, it's still showing 0.
He said that.
All right, we are back. We will move on to, can I get a motion on subject 9.04, renewal of the Transition Alliance Program TAP partnership between Davenport Community School District and Iowa Vocational Rehab Services.
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move the board approve the renewal of the Transition Alliance Program TAP partnership between Davenport Community School District and Iowa Vocational Rehab Services.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. The motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it. Motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 9.05, renewal of the Project Search partnership between Davenport Community School District and Iowa Vocational Rehabilitation Services?
Mr. President,
Director Beck.
I move the board approve the attached Project Search contract with Iowa Vocational Rehabilitation Services in the amount of $244,931.22 for the time period of October 1st, 2023 to September 30th, 2024.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Could-
Director Klein-Jerome?
Could I just ask one question? I think this is the one where I saw that it was Project Search / Silvercrest. How is that changing the program? I was surprised to see there was another.
Yeah, no, it's exciting to have a new partner. So it's just diversifying the type of experiences our students are receiving in this program.
Would they only be at Silvercrest receiving jobs, or?
Both opportunities are available to students. St. Ambrose and Silvercrest.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it. Motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 9.06, change order for West High School gym, weight room, wrestling room project?
Mr. President,
Director Poston.
move the board approve the change order from Bill Bruce Builders in the amount of $28,600.44 pertaining to the West High School gym, weight room, wrestling room project.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Nobody? I got a couple things. And it was, if I understand right, it was one pipe that was in the way of this?
There's two pipes that were not located.
Okay. Are they made out of gold?
No.
I'm just, $28,000 is crazy to me, but I'm assuming it must be down and they got to shore it up and all that so it doesn't collapse in.
A good majority of the pricing here, I think $14,000 of it's material costs that I'm aware of from one vendor, but it was a pipe under the ground that was not shown on any drawings that we had. It was underneath a sidewalk actually. So nothing was existing up above the ground so we could even locate it when we did our survey. So in order to get this pipe or these pipes moved, which would be underneath the building now, if we were to build it there, there's got to be some excavating done, exactly like you said, pipes moved, trench boxes put in, things like that.
Okay, I could see that with the cost of it. And I know you said they weren't on the plans, but were they on any plans at like City Hall and stuff? Because I know every time you pull a permit, they keep all those plans.
And we contacted them and they didn't have any record of it on their plans or in
Okay.
their records.
Well, you were very prepared. I appreciate that. So they're just gonna shore it up, move the pipes so they're out of the way of the foundation and stuff, I'm assuming, or will they go through the foundation? Okay.
We're just moving it.
And what are the pipes for?
Storm sewer, storm drain.
Oh yeah, definitely got to move that. Any other discussion? Good thing it wasn't on that, because I'm gonna vote for this one. So good for you. Seeing no more discussion, I will call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Ayes have it. Motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 9.07, policies for board approval?
Mr. President,
Director Klein Jerome.
I move that we approve the following policies: 104, 200.04, 304.04, 304.07, 305.19, 305.24, 306.04, 402.02, 402.05, 407.02, 408.01, 501.02, 503.07, 507.02, 601.01, 602.20, 604.12, 605.02, 605.03, 605.05, 607.02, 701.02, 708, 710.04, and 804.05.
Second. Thank you. Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Director Beck.
I would again like to voice my displeasure with policy 503.07. I find it cumbersome, unwelcoming, and discriminatory, but I will vote for it because it is required by law.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. We will now move on to discussion items. Up first is subject 10.01, replacement of existing phone system. I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
One of the things that's absolutely critical next step for us in the area of technology is the replacement of our phone system. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Tim Bellman, as I introduced him earlier today, and he's also got a very valuable member of his team. So if you wouldn't mind, Tim, introducing the people that you have here with you today.
Yeah, I've got Colin Hauser here on my right, and we've got Jeff Simpson back here. The other two are running around supporting the efforts. So I've got these two here for backup. Thank you for your time. This is to share the proposal for a new phone system to replace the existing with a solution that will include implementation, managed services, and full user training. Our existing platform, which is kind of based off the Skype for Business platform, is end of life. It's very problematic as well as very difficult to get support. We've only found one vendor that will support it, as well as the existing infrastructure that it rides on is also reaching end of life per Microsoft. So the idea is to go to a cloud-based solution, which will give us more secure infrastructure, and then we will transition from the Skype for Business platform to Microsoft Teams conferencing platform. It's a collaborative conferencing and meeting solution that will include, of course, we'll have desk phones replacements. We'll have soft phone options where you can place and receive calls on the computer via software. The ability for remote communication certainly is there, as well as the capability to deliver any type of remote learning or instructional content. And then we'll have multiple user trainings in multiple delivery formats that'll be made available as well. The impact, there are several listed here. I'm just going to touch on a couple. Sorry. Yeah, the top one certainly is the enhanced telephony features. So enhanced communication, collaborative for staff, students, parents. We'll have increased reliability. This solution is hosted in the Microsoft cloud for secure data centers, as well as a high availability. You can think of it as having almost two systems with one that would fail over to the other if there were any issues. But that obviously equates to uninterrupted district operations. 24/7 managed services is also a big one. We don't have that expertise here on staff. So this would provide us expert support around the clock. It'd actually be a dedicated support staff through the vendor. The enhanced security, again, with it being Microsoft Teams in the cloud, there's more robust security features, which is going to protect all of our data and be in compliance with any data protection regulations. And lastly, it puts us future ready for any other technologies that we can adapt quickly to and evolve, because this will kind of be the foundation for that. The other capability that this gives us that we do not have today is dynamic E911 services. So E911 is what we have today. It's enhanced 911. It's essentially identifying a location, a physical address, and then it just routes it to the appropriate safety answering point. Dynamic enhanced 911, this is adapted to the modern users that are increasingly using mobile and wireless devices. So it provides an actual dispatchable location, regardless of where you're at. I mean, it can get down to a building and what area of that building you are, as opposed to just simply an address. Part of this, a lot of this is required by law, depending on jurisdiction, local and federal regulations. The 911 calls will also be, anything that's placed will be also routed to our front desk or reception as well. And then lastly, in terms of the modern technology, Microsoft Teams has an extensive host of integrations and plugins that can be implemented. The AI chatbots, there's educational tools that we currently use. Not something that we're well versed in just yet, but this certainly sets us up to be able to accommodate some of those technologies. The next slide is really just kind of the look and feel. This is what the software would look like on a computer. You've got your dial pad there, and speed dials, and it gives you all of your contacts, voicemail, etc. Now, people have to learn how to use this, correct? So user training is also part of this, of the solution. The vendor has provided several different delivery methods, from user guides to webinars. They'll do a post-learning survey to find out if there's any customized individual trainings that we need. So they've covered that quite well. Managed services is a big piece of this. Why would we do this? So one, it's going to streamline all of our operations with proactive IT support. Again, we don't have that expertise in-house. But furthermore, it also gives us 24/7 monitoring. Again, with the security piece, there's scalability, business continuity. Obviously gives us a quick response time if there is something that needs to be addressed. From a security standpoint, again, with the regular monitoring and health checks that they will do, again, this is a dedicated team for us. They're doing all of the security updates to ensure that our data is secure, and we're protecting our confidential student and staff data. Again, I mentioned the redundancy and the failover. That just provides the high availability, so we don't have concerns that the system would go down. From an operations standpoint, what we do today is we deal with all of the different the adds and removes and changes and moving phones about. That we will no longer have to do, other than just having a boot on the ground that can maybe move a phone from point A to point B. We just simply plug a phone in. They handle all those things for us. And then again, support is 24/7, 365, dedicated support staff for all service and administrative related tasks. The vendor is Netrix, which we've had an ongoing relationship with them, a very good one. I had heard of them prior to coming here to the district. I hadn't worked with them, but in my short period of time, the team here has been more than satisfied with them. I've gotten to work with them enough. The expertise, the response is it's very, very impressive. So 2 projects that we've already worked with them on. The original legacy phone system, they helped implement that. And then when we transitioned to what we have today, they also helped with this as well. Their services were also used to upgrade this room in terms of the projectors and all the AV equipment. Today we have an ongoing emergency support contract with them, which again, the response time has been top notch, as well as the resolution times. Just doing due diligence on Netrix, I asked for some references. I've actually talked to a couple of these folks at other school districts. Netrix is very much so in the education sector. They've got some ongoing work and several case studies of some things that they've done. So pretty confident, certainly in the vendor that we're working with. From a numbers standpoint, at the top, we're currently paying our carrier, Lumen, about $30,000 annually. So that's about $2,500 average per month. Again, with Netrix, we've got the annual emergency support agreement. That's $9,600 that is paid for that service. And the others that I have listed, these are just ad hoc support things that came up that were outside of that agreement. So those costs essentially go away and or are absorbed in the costs for the service, the new solution. The $732,000 is for the 3-year term subscription. It's the 24/7 managed services. There was some cost savings in doing the 3-year as opposed to regular monthly or annual cadence there. The $61K is for their professional and the deployment services to actually implement the solution. There's some money there for the training services. The next one is Intune is actually an add-on that just comes with this. We're licensed for it. It's not anything in addition to, but we need some training on that piece, which one helps us track the phones, as well as provides us the ability to actually push jobs and software out. So that's going to be a really nice, robust tool for us to do what little management of that we need to do. The last bit, pretty significant cost of the project are the phones themselves. We put that out for bid, and we're able to save roughly about $18,000, per the state contract pricing. So the total of the project itself is $1.2 million, and then we've got a monthly reoccurring cost just for the hosting of our numbers and that service at about $5,000 a month. That is all I have. Questions?
Director Hayes.
Now, I have 2 questions. In transitioning to these phones, will there be any disruption of service? And I know not too awful long ago, we had our phone numbers changed. Will we be able to port those numbers and retain them, or have to get new numbers again?
Yeah, the numbers actually, so we're doing that proactively this month. Actually, the numbers will be ported over from Lumen. Netrix is handling that for us this month because Lumen is doing away with our service. So that will be taken care of. As far as interruption in service, that should not be taking place. This is going to be more of a slow roll implementation. Again, they've done this before. The idea is to kind of do this building by building. I don't have a timeline, but I would expect this will probably, work its way through the remainder of the year should we be proceeding with this. So, but no, should be no interruption in service whatsoever.
Director Klein, you're on.
It says any 911 calls placed on our phone system are also routed to the front desk reception. Is that, so look, if I'm at Central and I'm in a classroom and I dial 911, is it going to my office at Central or is it going to ASC?
I would assume we could do either one. We'll program that depending on whatever that need is or where we want those to route per building.
The calls themselves aren't getting routed to the front desk. The front desk just receives a notification that there was a 911 call placed in that building in this room with this phone, so that not only emergency services are aware that 911 needs to go there, but the front desk does too. That way, when police or paramedics show up, they know what's going on and they know where to send those people.
So it's a front desk of whatever building calls.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Director Beck?
Yeah, so I don't know if this necessarily overlaps, but we had been using, like we just went to using Zoom in this boardroom, and it was a much better product than what we were using before. Is that going to go away and now we have to use Teams meetings? Because I'll be honest, I hate Teams meetings. Or is that something that's a separate product? Like the phone system is separate from the meeting system?
Well, Teams will be the standard. I mean, that will be the platform that we will use. That's not to say that we couldn't use Zoom. I mean, that could still be used. So there's no technology or technical reason that the two couldn't, be used. My understanding is we have a few licenses, I think, for Zoom. I would think that Teams would easily replace that, but depends on the preference, and if there's a need for it, they could certainly coexist.
Okay. And then, so that kind of leads me to my other question. You said this could be used for collaboratively and collaboration among staff, students, and parents. So are you thinking in terms of like, if we had an emergency where we had to go to remote learning or something like that, Teams would now be the platform that people would use? Because I know one of the issues, well, we had Google Classroom. We have Google Classroom for a lot of stuff. And so, is this going to cause a disruption to where things are housed now? Or is Google Classroom still usable over a Teams meeting network?
As far as the integration, I'm not sure, but certainly Teams could be the from a video conferencing standpoint. Again, you can do that via computer, via mobile device,
Okay.
Any of those things. So again, I think they could coexist.
Okay, so basically all the stuff that teachers have now that's housed in
Yes.
Google Classrooms, that's not going to have to change or anything like
Correct.
that? Okay.
Correct.
Director Poston?
So just looking at the current cost and then the new cost, there's quite a difference here. Am I missing something here as far as, I know the one is just a one-time cost, but can you explain that to me?
The difference between the current and today's,
Yes.
and the one time.
Yeah.
So the current costs, really all we're subscribing to today is a carrier. We're paying a monthly bill for our phone service.
Right.
The support we kind of do on our own today. It's on-premise infrastructure, so it's kind of, we manage it today best that we can.
Mm-hmm.
That's really all you're getting out of that, which is why we also had to have those kind of an emergency support agreement with somebody, because we knew that if we ran into something that was a critical in nature, we were going to need some assistance. So that's really just kind of that bare bones, hey, we're just paying for a service.
Okay.
The costs that we're looking at here, aside from the deployment and trainings, that major cost right there is a subscription for full-on managed services. Again, the solution is being fully hosted in the cloud with secure infrastructure. It's actually relieves us from a huge burden of having to maintain on-site infrastructure from a security standpoint. That's all handled that way. You know, there's the reliability, there's the failover, there's a you know, a dedicated support staff for this, which is going to free up a lot of our time so that we can focus on more relevant things rather than a lot of this administrative overhead that we tend to, it's a lot of noise for us. Certainly the phones, that's a cost when you go to replacing phones, but yeah, there's really the only comparison there really, I guess in my mind, is what we're hosting there for the monthly $5,000 versus what we're paying today, which it is twice what we're paying today, but again, it's not an apples to apples comparison at all. In that these are services, long-term services that we're going to have. It's a cloud solution that's going to provide that infrastructure that our current carrier certainly can't, you know, cover or accommodate.
Is there any other discussion? Director Beck?
Sorry if I'm exhibiting extreme ignorance here, but so right now, if the power goes out, do the phones still work?
Yes.
And if we go to something with a cloud, are the phones still going to work if the power goes out?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. It's today we're really at the mercy of our carrier.
Okay.
That's handling our phone service. So it wouldn't be internally. Yes, our phone system could go down internally, which is, this will also alleviate that. But there's just the redundancy and the support with this solution that we don't have today.
Okay.
So most everything that we have running today, you know, it's going to, if we lost power, our UPS would kick in to support, you know, to support everything that's in place.
Just to jump in real quick, we do have battery backups on all of the equipment that powers the phones in the classrooms and on people's desks. They have a limited amount of time before, if a building's power gets cut, most of them are within a 60 to 2 hour window, or 60 minute to 2 hour window of that thing has power. Anything beyond that, I mean, there's not much we can do unless we want to put a generator in every building.
Right.
So,
and then, so likewise, if the internet goes out, which I know is rare, but it's happened here in the last few years a number of times, can people still make phone calls?
unfortunately, no.
Okay.
We are looking at getting, we're workshopping ideas to make like a redundant internet connection
Okay.
that would feed specifically the phones,
Okay.
and maybe like a principal or a head secretary or something like that. But we don't have anything in the works right now, and that would also be very expensive.
Right. Well, I mean, and I mean, I realize cell phones are fairly ubiquitous no matter what building you're in, but having the ability for the principal to use a phone, you know, in an emergency, even if the internet's out, I feel like is kind of an important thing. But if you can build that type of thing in with these, it's fine. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have anything? Is there any other information board members would need to vote on this at the next regular meeting? The only thing I'm going to ask, and I think Director Beck kind of asked on it, this will be, because we just did a while back some Google stuff, and this is going to be compatible with all that, because I just don't see how the two systems work together, because good for y'all for making it work, because I can't, but...
Yeah, they're totally separate systems. The phone system and everything Google is, yeah, totally separate.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, when you started talking about Teams and everything like that, that's kind of where I was going with that.
The option to use it is available once we have everything set up and in place. So if people choose to adopt like the collaborative intricacies of Teams, they can. If they want to use it as just a phone system, they can do that too.
Okay.
So
Well, great job for 5 weeks on the job. Make you come right to the board and ask us to spend money. So good for you. Way to set them up there, guys. Get you broke in right. All right. No one needs any other additional information. All right. Thank you, gentlemen, for the presentation.
Thank you.
The next subject is 10.02 computer lab upgrade for Central's graphic arts lab. Turn it over to the superintendent.
I think the next three actually belong to Allie and Diane. So
I don't have a presentation to go along with this one. So we are seeking approval to use an SCRA grant, which we received this last spring, to update and upgrade one of the Central High School graphic arts computer labs. What questions do you have?
Can you explain what SCRA stands
Oh
for?
yeah, sorry.
For the folks
Scott
that don't
County
know?
Regional Authority Grant.
Perfect. Thank you. All the acronyms sometimes folks
Yes.
don't know. Appreciate it.
We joke about it, but it really is a problem.
True that. Should come up with a cheat sheet.
We have one. Would you like it?
Does anyone have any questions on this? Director Klein-Jerome.
Does the grant cover the whole cost
Yes.
of this? Thank you.
Even better, I don't think you're gonna have a problem passing that one. Good for you. Is that it for this one? You want to move on to the next one? Oh, Director Potts, sorry.
How many improvements have been made to the computer room in the last 20 years at Central?
At Central.
I'm
you're-
being facetious.
Okay.
Seeing no other discussion, we'll move on to subject 10.03 curriculum resource adoptions for PLTW launch engineering module expansion. Superintendent.
This is also me and Melissa. So PLTW, Project Lead the Way, launch is our curriculum that we use for the science classrooms in the elementary. The reason why this is also partially me, just as a reminder, Allie Vandermine, curriculum specialist for CTE. When discussing how to better build our engineering program after COVID especially, we found that our engineering programs were significantly decreasing in numbers, even though we know that the interest is there. So one of the things that the teachers and I came together to really talk about was where is that falling off and why? So as we discussed that this last summer, one of the places that we felt that we wanted to try and invest more energy was at the elementaries. So we had some money allotted for us through ESSER for the high school, but they kind of passed on it to the elementaries, which I thought was really cool. And so I will let Melissa take over for where we want to expand.
Within the past year, Melissa Trimble, science specialist. Within the past year, we have implemented the robotics lessons for Project Lead the Way into our 5th grade curriculum to wild acclaim and great success. And what we found out was that even though we had set up every one of the buildings equitably with resources, they really need more of what we already have in place. So rather than 6 setups per building, we would like to expand that to be 6 setups per section at each building, so that when they're constructing the robots, they don't have to take them apart every time, because the next section that comes in needs them to be able to be built fresh from the next group of kids. So this would allow the teachers to have their own setups for each of the sections to be able to move that forward. This particular component of Project Lead the Way is directly linked to those engineering standards, which will then hopefully promote that interest and carry the kids forward to see that this is where it starts. And then the hope is that they will get further up the ladder and into high school and choose engineering.
This also gives our engineering teachers a very specific place within the classroom to be able to do visits, to have conversations about what comes next, and to just create those connections and moments. What questions do you have?
Does anyone have any questions? You're just knocking them out tonight. Good for you. Well, thank you. We'll move on to subject 10.04, data wall final feedback. I turn it over to Superintendent.
Good evening, everyone. In August, we had the opportunity to come together and just give an overview during the discussion time about the data wall and what that would look like. And during that time, we gathered some information, and then we were able to go back and work on some next steps and some iterations. And so there are two things that I think are really important as we share just this preliminary piece. And the first one is this is iteration number 1. And so we have collected so much information and feedback. And if you remember in August, one of the beginning steps was even just defining the data. What data are we looking at? Where is it coming from? Because depending on where you get your data, it can change. So we wanted to be really clear about that. So all that foundational work was done. And then this is iteration 1. So just remember that we're back again for more feedback to gather and determine where we go with iteration 2. So that's one foundational piece. And I would say the second piece is that the enemy to greatness is really perfection. And that's a quote, and I wish I remember who that person was, but I will find out and let you know, because I think this is a really good example, because I personally always look for that perfection and I want things mapped out. But this is one of those tasks that I think we're gonna start to feel the cadence, and we're gonna start to feel the routine after we just try some things. So this is really, again, iteration 1 with us trying and showing what this would look like. We'll gather information, and then we're going to keep coming back. But at least tonight, you'll be able to see what the display is. So it's not as much about the data tonight as it is the display, the conversation around the data, and then what that cadence would become. So with that, what we would do is on the left side, Courtney would have her display up. If you, yeah, you can do the data. And the idea is we're looking at chronic absenteeism, which is a district or a DCSD goal. And the data is always going to be displayed on the left-hand side. And then on the right-hand side, we would be looking at what are the actions that are tied to this data that we're currently doing. We also, depending on the data point, would have discussion about, are there some next steps? Are there some additional things that we need to look at? What's important to remember is this is a district level view of data. So you're going to get that overview picture of the entire district. It's not the time that we're digging in. We have teams that are going into this data. Attendance is a perfect one. Courtney is doing an amazing job leading an attendance team at the district level that's supporting the buildings. So again, this would be the data. The goal is written right there, so we know what the target is. That was some feedback that came during our session in August. So with that, this happens to just be a screenshot of our student groups with chronic absenteeism. If you look at the next one, this is the ADA. Again, our goal is around chronic absenteeism because we know that's a measure we can, on a daily basis, monitor and see what our numbers are. But we also want to have that preview of what our ADA is. And this is by grade level. So this would be the elementary by grade. And the next one would be secondary. And again, this happens to be 7th through 12th grade with the ADA, not chronic absenteeism. Okay. What I'd like to show on this particular slide is just what a visual would look like as we progress through the months. So we just did an attendance look, but over time, as the months progress, we can start to put it in this type of format. So you can see there are grades on track by term, and then we have behavior incidents in school and out of school. ADA is on there. Chronic absenteeism is not at this point, but that would be one visual. So over time, you would see what the trends are for each of those data points. We also, I'm going to have you just go back to the chronic absenteeism slide. With that, again, the biggest question is, what are we doing about it? And so in this example, you can see on the right-hand side is the list of what those improvement implementation plans are. And so I'll let Courtney just talk a minute about that, just give an overview.
Yeah, so like Dan was saying, that we thought it was really important to not only look at the data, but talk about what we're doing. So just as an example with the attendance piece, we have our district level team that has come together to have a data review cadence, as well as come up with action plans. So we have an implementation plan that we're implementing right now. To do that, we've reviewed and studied best practices. Like I said, we have our implementation plan. We are developing a year-long calendar. So what are the actions that we're going to be holding ourselves accountable for throughout the year? We've also started our district-wide campaign, and we've brought this to the building level. So now they have teams doing the exact type of work that we're doing, but at the building level. And right now we're kind of working towards that just community partnership and the materials for our campaign. So that's just an example of some of the actions we're taking for attendance right now.
With that, if you have questions, thoughts?
Director Kleindrum.
That last slide and several others, I mean, I do wear glasses, but I cannot read some of the things that are up there. So can we make them a little bit larger so that people can see it, because your numbers get very small on a lot of these things. The other thing, the chronic absenteeism, I know the state does not care whether you have cancer and are out 10 days or you're just skipping school 10 days. I do think it should be differentiated. Is there any way for our numbers that we could have one that, you know, if we know a child that has some illness and they aren't going to be there, that we don't put them on this list because it looks bad, but they can't help that.
Yeah. I think getting to that level of detail is the perfect example of what Dan was talking about. That's really for our building level teams to dig into, because you're absolutely right. Research is even beginning to show there's a difference between an excused absence and an unexcused absence. And so that's the level of detail that our buildings get into. But at this level, we'll still stick to those state definitions and how they calculate it, because that's ultimately what we're graded on. So that would be my response for that.
Director Beck.
I think so. First of all, thank you for requesting feedback. I agree with Director Kleindrum that some of the text is a little small, but I understand the point. It's like a 50,000 foot view, right? What I'm envisioning, or what I kind of wondered, was like, when it was a static data wall in our old boardroom, it was like a bulletin board with, these were the scores for this at each of the schools for, you know, reading or whatever tests were being emphasized that quarter. Are we going to have something that's like sort of continuously cycling? So like while we're at a meeting, it has, you know, here's where we are, here's, you know, just kind of regularly overview of the district with, you know, even trend lines like over the semester or something like that. To me, that's kind of like what I'm thinking of when I think of a data wall. It has all the data over time. So if somebody just needs to grab a snapshot, they can glance up. And I guess I can understand it would be a little bit distracting during a meeting maybe, but, you know, and I appreciate having the linkage here, but to me, it's sort of like, okay, if this is what we're discussing right now, great. But if I want to keep my mind on student achievement, what are some of the other things that I should know when I go back to speak with parents or speak with, you know, other people? What are our test scores? Which school is doing best at reading? Which school, you know, those kinds of things. I don't know if that's sort of beyond the scope of this, but that's.
So it is our what we plan to do is to have data that is constant, similar to this. But then there will be times of the year where we review ISASH data, where we review FAST data, where we review college and career ready data, and that data will be able to be displayed. But in the meantime, when we're not doing that, this data will be up there.
And then to your question about static versus a rotating, these can be set up so that it can automatically move to the next slide. And for example, that last slide that we looked at with the data, it was one slide and it did have the trend over time. So you could see it in one, but as you said, it was really small. So we can take those and put it on each slide and then move the slides along. But that would mean it is rotating, you know, as you're in the meeting.
There's also been several recommendations of putting buildings up there. It is our recommendation to the board that we keep district level data up there, but know and understand that every other week our ILDs meet with the buildings, are discussing their data, reviewing their plans, moving forward. The district has such a range of buildings inside of the district. It'd be almost impossible to relay apples to apples from building to building. But just know that inside of our cascade of information that we do and the way that we check for things, we have our own early warning system that has every building, every student, every teacher to it, to where we are reviewing that data and looking for ways to have the conversation and looking for ways to have those conversations ongoing, look for trends, look for ways to eliminate barriers and support our staff to make sure that we are ultimately meeting that goal of to and through a certificated program in our district.
Any other discussion on this or feedback? Director Kleindrum?
And just, I would refrain from using acronyms, ADA, BIR. You know, public's gonna look at that and, I mean, I can tell you what OSS and ISS is, but yeah, spell it out, not just for the board, but everybody.
Any other feedback? I appreciate you all putting this together. I agree. Yeah, if you can get rid of the acronyms, that helps out a bunch. I think that this will be good for us to have up when we're doing our board meetings and things like that, because it keeps us charged with keeping you all charged with student impacts and things like that, because if it's right out front, it's always at the forefront of our mind. So thanks. But will it be on all the time or only? It's like when you guys have staff stuff in here and there. Okay, perfect. Well, you already shook your head, man. It's on. It was on camera.
All the time during our board meetings, yes.
Okay. Okay.
When there's nobody in here, no.
Okay. Good answer. Saving money.
August and September data will be up there.
That's the plan.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, thank you for making Director Hayes' vision come alive. Administrative reports.
None at this time.
I really thought you were going there. Board requests. Are there any board requests? Board reflections. We'll start with Director Barnes.
Just want to reflect on the thoughtful discussion regarding SMART and Sudlow. Appreciate the varying perspectives that were discussed tonight. A very thoughtful group and thoughtful discussion. I also want to support Director Beck's comments regarding the policy, which does not come across as very welcoming, but certainly understand the need for us all to approve that.
Thank you, Director Barnes. Director Potts.
I think our conversations we're having on the remodeling of Sudlow and Smart are crucial and very important.
Thank you, Director Potts. Director Klein-Jerome.
I'm happy to see that we're renewing Project Search. That's one of the things that when we go to a graduation, we are all very happy to be a part of that. Also, the discussion on Sudlow at this time, I think putting a pause on it gives us a little bit of time to get the word out to people.
Thank you, Director Klein-Jerome. Director Beck.
I think the discussion on the SMART and Sudlow that is as Superintendent Schneckloff often says, legacy work, and I think it's really important. And I look forward to seeing where we go with that. But I also wanted to say that I really appreciate the fact that we are going to upgrade a computer lab using a grant. It's that kind of creative out-of-the-box thinking. They're gone now, but that, we want to see where it's something that's super important for our students, but somebody found a way to support it that isn't directly out of our general fund, for example. And I think that shows that, well, like I said, creative out-of-the-box thinking. So, yeah.
Thank you, Director Beck. Director Poston.
Yeah, the discussion on our middle schools, I think what we do with our middle schools is going to be very critical for our district.
Thank you, Director Poston. Director Hayes.
I too appreciate the Sudlow project discussion and the points that everyone brought forward with it. And I'm kind of partial to the data wall. I'm very happy to see that up and running, and I just cannot wait to see some of the things that are displayed on it.
Thank you, Director Hayes. Superintendent Schneckloff.
I too really appreciate the discussion of Sudlow. There's two things that feed into it. One, the real discussion that occurred, and two, the effort of being transparent. We came across something that we wanted our board to see and have the ability to make decision. I also appreciate the fact of maybe taking a little time and surveying our community members. That's never the wrong thing to do. So we definitely can do that. The second thing is I'm really proud of the work that our technology department has been putting in. The start of the school year was wonderful. It's great to see Tim and his team here. They're really, this project has been haunting us for a while, and to see this get moving and get shaping up is very powerful. And Tim, you've done a really nice job in your first 5 weeks. So, and I have no doubt that these gentlemen really pushed you to get those phones moving too.
Thank you, Superintendent Schneckloff. I think we had great discussion tonight. Allie knocked it out of the park. No one needed to add anything to it. Appreciate that. I do want to give kudos to the operations department for looking into everything on the change orders before bringing it to us. That's nice when we actually have all that information, and it's just not people trying to get a little more money out of us. So thank you for that. With that, Director Potts, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries, meeting adjourned.